Hello everyone, so I'm here to do another Read Around the World project video, and this time I'm going to focus on Southeastern Europe, so that includes Belarus, Ukraine, Russia, Moldova, Romania and Bulgaria. I understand that Russia is not south, but it's kind of where it fitted best. So yeah, those are the countries I'm going to talk to you about. So let's start by Belarus. So for Belarus I read Voices of Chernobyl by Svetlana Alexievitch, and this is mostly about Chernobyl, which is in Ukraine, but Svetlana Alexievitch is Belarusian, so I'm gonna count it as Belarusian. And this is a non-fiction journalistic take on what happened in Chernobyl. So she talks to a lot of people from Chernobyl, and different aspects of it, like the doctors that treated people, the people that lived in Chernobyl, people that lived in Kiev and Minsk, and were affected by the radiation in the air. So it's very complete. But for me, and Svetlana Alexievitch is very well regarded. She has a Nobel Prize, so she's clearly very good at what she does. However, I have to say that for me, even though I appreciated this book a lot and I really liked to know more about it, and I really learned a lot about exactly what happened in Chernobyl and the effects of that on people. I did think that the interviews did get a little bit repetitive at times. So yeah, for me it was a bit of a drag to go through sometimes, but overall, yeah, it is a very informative book, and I think that a lot of people will benefit a lot from reading it. I just didn't gel with that extremely journalistic writing style. I know that a lot of people have, so it's not to say I don't recommend it, but just for me, it was not my favorite book that I've ever read. Then for Ukraine, I've read Grey Bees by Andrew Kurkov, and I actually have a full review of this in my channel. I read it for Invisible Cities last year, and it was interesting. It's about this man that lives around Crimea and has a lot of bees, and he's forced by the war to move more into main Ukraine. And this is around 2014, so the first time that the Russians tried to invade parts of Ukraine, and before the current war. And I like the tone of the book, but I thought that the pacing was a little bit slow at times, and I think that's intentional because this man has to wait a lot around for things to happen and news to come in, and so the slowness of the book is in tune with the slowness of his life. You would think that when you're in a war everything is very frantic, but actually there's a lot of waiting times. So this is kind of what the book looks at, more like. So for me, even though I understand it's a very good book, I think, and it reflects the war and the tensions between Russia and Ukraine quite well, I just found it that the reading experience was not as enjoyable as it could have been. Then for Russia, I've read actually just a bunch of classics. Mostly I have read The Master and Margarita, Anna Karenina, Crime and Punishment, War and Peace and The Idiot, and they are just I think they well, The Master and Margarita was quite different and crazy, and I don't think I got all I could have. I think that book to me feels a bit like Salman Rushdie. I think there are parallels there to be made. It's very symbolic and it's very rich, and it went over my head a lot. But then all the classics, the normal classics, let's say, I found okay. I think I have a lot of the same feelings for many classics, also English classics, French classics. I just feel like they are not bad books, but it's just, it doesn't connect with me because the times are so different. So the topics that they talk about are so different. I just don't find them enriching in any way. So yeah, that's my thoughts on classics. Probably very unpopular, but I know a lot of people like to know where like things and ideas came from. I just, for me, it's not something I'm really interested in, and these classics just feel outdated. So yeah. And then the more recent one that I've read is In Memory of Memory by Maria Stepanova, and honestly, I didn't like this book. I also have a review for it because it was in the International Book Fair a couple of years ago, and it's very slow and anecdotic. It's just this woman going back to a family house that the person living there died, and she goes through all the papers and memories and photos. And it's kind of like when you go to your grandma's house and she picks up the photo album and she goes through all of these people that were like her second cousins that you have no idea about and don't really care about. That's kind of how this book fell. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend that one. The writing is very beautiful, but this book is like 400 pages, and the writing is not good enough to carry the lack of any nice, useful information through. Then the next country is Moldova, and for Moldova I read The Good Life Elsewhere by Vladimir Lorchenkov, and this is kind of a funny satire book about this village in which everyone really wants to leave the village, so they are trying to find strategies to move to Italy. There is this guy that has this like idealized image of Italy, so he's trying to go to Italy at all costs. So for example, there is a point in which he decides that they are going to make a curling team because the World Curling Championship is in Italy in a few years, and so curling is not, they consider, not such a widespread sport, so it would be relatively easy to go to the World Championship, so they just start playing curling so that they can move to Italy and escape Moldova, basically. And yeah, it was a funny book. It was an interesting take on things. I have, apart from this, I've watched a couple of documentaries of people traveling in Moldova, and they do say that Moldova is considered one of the worst countries in Europe. I don't know why. It makes me curious to visit now, but this book seems to suggest that Moldovans do think the same. Yeah, I don't know. It was interesting. I was very yeah, I was not expecting that to be the case, but yeah, overall the book was funny. I think the audiobook was a bit awkward because the narrator was trying to make the accent of, I assume, a Moldovan when he was reading the parts, and I'm not sure that worked very well. But other than that, I think the narration was fine. Then for Romania, I read Las Bellas Extranjeras by Mircea Cartarescu, which translates to the beautiful foreigners, strangers. And this I read also a couple of years ago for Invisible Cities, so I think that I have a blog for it, so I'll try to find it and link it down below. And Mircea Cartarescu is a well-known author for Romania. But for me, this was just, this was like short stories. They were quite long, so those ones sometimes work for me. But it was just like kind of misogynistic and not very interesting. Like the topics about these stories were not appealing to me. So it was a lot about being a writer and kind of autofiction, and yeah, I'm not overly interested in books talking about being a writer because I don't have any any wish to become a writer, and I think that it is a little bit somehow lazy and a little bit tired to write about writers, because obviously that's what writers know about. So it's just talking about your own life with no input about other people's real world kind of situation. So yeah, I was not very impressed by this. If you have any other recommendations from Romania, I would love to hear. But other than that, yeah, that was not that impressive to me. And then for Bulgaria, I read El Pentateuch de Isaac by Angels Wagenstein, which I think translates like Isaa's Torah. And this, I mean, I don't know if it quite fits to Bulgaria. The author is Bulgarian, but the story is about this man that is from an area that used to be in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and then that part became Poland, and it became part of the Third Reich, and then it became part of the USSR. So it's it does really show how not defined for very long those borders are in some areas of Europe. But yeah, this is about a Jew that is from that area in Galicia, I think it's called, and he lived through the First World War, then the Second World War, then he went to a concentration camp because he was a Jew, and then he went to the Gulag because the Russians thought that he was helping the Nazis in the concentration camps, and he had the same initials as one of the main commanders in the camp, and so they said that he signed those death sentences when obviously he was just a prisoner there. So he went to the Gulag, and it's just about how senseless all of that was, and how most people that were involved didn't want to be involved, and they were there by accident. And how you had to make certain choices, and there was probably not a right or wrong answer in most cases. So yeah, it was interesting. I think the tone was also kind of sarcastic in parts, and I enjoyed it enough. I don't think it was a masterpiece, but I think it was a good book. It was just not about Bulgaria, but yeah, it was interesting. I think it's a good enough book, let's say. So yeah, those are all the countries that I read for this part of the video. We are getting to the end of Europe. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any recommendations from any of these places, or if you have read any of these books. I want to talk about it, and until next video. Bye!